Thank you for coming today, everyone, to celebrate Peter's life. So today, I'm introducing, then we'll have a speech from Aloysius, from me, from Kuba, from Rick. We'll have live photographs and music, and then afterwards, there's a wake at the Governor Hotel, which is a 4-minute drive from here, with food and everything. Okay, so thank you. Al, you're first up.
Thanks everyone for coming today. Yes, so obviously these aren't the best circumstances to be seeing everyone. Let's talk about my dad and what he meant to me personally. My dad was, in short, my role model. He was, later in life, he became my friend. Growing up, my father, and I didn't necessarily see him as a hero as a child, but I saw him as a hero as an adult. Growing up, we would watch Predator, Terminator, all those movies, and I look at that and I think, man, those people, those movie stars, they're so cool and everything, and I want to do that when I grow up, and wrestling and WWF and all that. But as I've lived my life, I see my dad and I realize that he was the real star and he was the real hero because of everything that he did and what he sacrificed for his family. And he sacrificed a lot. And I'm going to speak about what I know about my father prior to me being born, when he was a young man. I'm sure Rick will say, his brother will say more, but from what I know, growing up, Dad was a crazy footy player. He would play above his years. He was really good. The tackling demon, they call him. He could kick a torpedo. He was insanely good. He grew up in Marylands, and it was a very rough area back then. It still is today. And he got in many fights, and he he'd get chased by thugs, but he was fit and they could never catch him. And that's what he was. He was fit. And and his dad said he was so good at footy that the coach of Parramatta actually came and watched him play. But my dad had no knowledge of that. And the coach said, he's insane, he should do a tryout. But his dad hadn't told him that, and therefore he didn't go to the tryout. So he told me that story many times. Whether he would have made it or not, who knows, but yeah. And as a hobby growing up, he loved his surfing, and he loved playing snooker. He was a champion, like he'd beat people all the time, and he'd clean up at pubs. But he was a very ethical person, and like if someone lost their money and he could tell it really upset them, he wouldn't take it, He just said, keep it. He was not a materialistic person. For him, everything was principle-based and how you treat others, and that's how he raised me and Kuba, based off that. And that's why I realized as I've gotten older that, he never cared about anything in regards to, materialism or anything like that. Everything was about just doing the right thing, treating people well, and doing what you want to do in life. And he never forced me to do anything I didn't want to do. And I was a bit of a dropkick in school, and I procrastinated a lot. And I started watching footy maybe when I was 16, 17, wrestling at that time as well. And I started to connect with my dad a lot at that age. And we would sit down and watch that on TV together. And he supported the Parramatta Eels, and then I started supporting the Parramatta Eels, and then that we shared a lot of in common watching that together. And it was very special having that with my dad, as a teenager. And then I remember after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so he said, "You're going to do a trade with me." And then I said, under one condition. If you get Fox Sports, I'll do the trade. Me being an idiot, not realizing that, I could have worked a job and then what's that, $30 a month? So yeah, it was a very silly decision on my end. But he did that, and I started getting very much into the gym, and I stopped watching TV anyway, but I worked with him every day. In that first year, I was a bit slack, but in the subsequent years, I worked with him all the time, and it was an absolute pleasure working with him. And I realized how insanely creative and practical my dad was. And he had such a unique way of thinking and solving problems that I've never seen in my life. And, I was a pain in the ass working with him, I'll admit. But he's a very patient person, and, he never made it an issue. And that's what says the most about his character, He's very reasonable no matter what, always reasonable. So going from there, I changed careers, I became a trainer, and then I stopped working with my dad. I only worked with him 1 day a week, and I would help him on harder jobs. And he was very accepting of that. And through those years, through my mid-20s, late 20s and 30s is when I really started to appreciate my dad and the hard work he'd done and the things he'd sacrificed. I never saw him in regular clothes. He was always in work clothes. He was always working. He was always working on something. He never really had any time off work. We had a couple of holidays growing up. Never went overseas, nothing. Just always working and paying bills. That was my dad. And in my 30s and late 20s is when I really started to appreciate him. Me and my brother, we appreciated him, who he was, his sense of humour and everything. And we loved him more every year from then. And we really started to appreciate him as we got older. And it's the last thing I did with my dad was I worked with him a week before he passed, which goes to show his character. He was obviously dealing with a lot, but he never showed it. He was fighting cancer, and he was in pain, and he was still turning up to work, and he wasn't making excuses. And I helped him on Monday. I helped him put a fan in Strathfield. And we were working together, we were swearing at each other. That's just how we did it, That's his style. He's swearing all the time. That's him, man. And that's how we loved working together. And it was very sad when he started having his issue that week. And I definitely wouldn't have predicted that he wouldn't be around after that week. That was heartbreaking. One thing I'll say is when he was in hospital, all he was thinking about was work. And that I need to order a fan. And he wasn't accepting what was happening. And he had his laptop there because he needed to do a course to keep his refrigeration license. He's doing a course, constantly working. And when they sat with him in bed, and they were lost with what to do with his circumstances, and they were managing his circumstances, he said, well, it's a very simple solution, really. He definitely understood what was happening, and he understood the pressure relationship with his lung and his heart. Being a refrigeration mechanic, it's what he spent his whole life doing. He's definitely right in that statement and how confidently he said it. To sum it up, I don't know how long I've been speaking for, but I'm not going to hog this. But to sum it up, my dad as a person, everything was about, how he treated others. and being fair and not ripping people off and just being a good person. He was never trying to squeeze the money out of anyone. He was just always trying to do the right thing. And I've learned that from my dad, and I absorb that into who I am, and I carry that with me. And that's how I pay respect to my dad, is I try to become him, the person that he was, as much as I can, because he was the perfect person in my eyes. I think there's no one better, and he really was my hero. Thank you, Dad. I appreciate everything you've done for me. Thanks.